Hello again, team. It's Jess or JashiiCorrin, and welcome back for what is my first official monthly Q&A video. Some lovely individuals in our community contributed questions via the post I had on Instagram and on my YouTube community tab, and I've got the answers, or at least my attempted answers, to those today. There are quite a few questions though, so not every single one is going to be included. I've mainly tried to go for the ones that multiple people showed interest in. During the video though, I'll be carrying out my regular planning in my journal, but where necessary or appropriate, we will cut to some other things. Some of the questions I received I do also have other videos for, so make sure to check out the description box below for links to those. Without further ado though, let's jump in. To organise this video somewhat, I've batched the questions that were submitted into different categories, and our first category contains the questions that were about how I use my bullet journal. When did you start bullet journaling and why? I started bullet journaling on November 4th, 2016 in this LT 1917 journal. Actually, to celebrate my 4th year with the system, I released 2 videos of questions from bullet journal beginners. Some of the questions I received for today's video, like ideas for coming up with bullet journal themes, sections in my journal that I deem essential and non-essential, and general advice for our bullet journal beginners, can be found in those videos, so I do encourage you to check them out if you hadn't already. What planning system did you use before bullet journaling? Outside of just writing lists down on scrap pieces of paper, my main organisation tool was Google Calendar. I was very serious about plotting my time in there, including my class schedule, meetings, social events, even my sleep and my travel time. In that, there's also a space for tasks, which is where I would keep my to-do list. How is your current weekly going? In particular, I was asked about my running task list and whether it was working for me or if I jumped back into my LT 1917. I can happily say that this weekly has been working well for me. My Emerald LT has been put back on the shelf, likely to be used when I need to jot down some messy notes or maybe just as spare paper. I've been really enjoying this running list with the Alistair method, but I already know at this stage I'm going to have to change it up for February when we start back at school. Even without my school tasks, the list is looking pretty full for this week, so I know I'll be needing more space next month. What is something in your journal that is still a work in progress? This was asked in context of things I haven't perfected yet in my journal, or anything I wanted to change about my journal for this year. One of the things I know that isn't quite right yet is my content scheduling pages. With one of my main goals being content batching at the moment, I need to tweak the layout so that I can see at a glance when the filming, editing, and posting dates for different things are. I also would have probably liked to have put my theme planning pages for my journal on a full spread rather than on an individual page, as I feel like I just need a little bit more room. Other than that though, the rest of my layouts seem to be working quite well at the moment. What is your favourite bullet journal theme to date? This was hard because I do actually have quite a few themes I really enjoyed, especially from the journal I had at the start of last year. But the one that first came to mind was my June 2020 theme, which was moons and mountains. I felt that the majority of the spreads in this one turned out really well, even though the style was a bit outside of my comfort zone. What is a theme you really want to try in your journal? I've always wanted to try to do a galaxy theme, but at my current skill level, I don't think I could achieve my vision, so I'm kind of saving it. Which honestly is just a little bit silly. If I want to do it, I should just do it now, and then do it again when I have more skills as well. There's nothing that says we can't do the same theme in our journal twice. Heck, I've done a Christmas theme twice, so why not? What is your favourite thing about bullet journaling? It would probably have to be the fact that, as a system, it's pretty forgiving. If I skip a week in a regular planner, I have an empty weekly layout sitting there reminding me that I didn't use it, and making me feel wasteful. If I skip a week in my bullet journal though, it just means that the weekly layout isn't there, and I can just move on to the next one. I also like that I can change my weekly layout as many times as I want to. Heck, if I start a weekly and realize the layout isn't for me, I can just draw out another one and use that instead. Did bullet journaling help you during lockdown? I actually found that one of my most consistent months in my journal was during lockdown, though this was very much helped by the fact that I did the Month of Planning with Me series on YouTube that month. Every single one of my trackers got filled in for the month. I made good use of my dailies/weeklies. I also got to put in some novel pages, like the ways to use a monthly log layout. But again, was very much helped by the fact that I was doing that Month of Planning series. How often do you check your bullet journal daily? I try to check in with my journal at least twice daily. One of those times is normally towards the end of the day, and the other one's normally towards the start or middle of the day. My consistency in this isn't super great though. Some days I won't check in with it at all, but I do try to avoid that. Some days I check in pretty much all the time. I do find that having it open and out on my desk to be the best way to make sure I do check in with it though. How do you keep track of your goals daily and weekly? This year I'm using a separate goals journal to write down action plans for each of the goals I'm working on. To keep track of my goals on a weekly basis, I move the action steps that I want to work on for that week into my weekly spread, putting them in the action steps box on the left. For keeping track daily though, this is where I mainly try to use my habit tracker, so having habits on there that are specifically related to my goals. This month I've done a varied job of that, but for February I think I'm going to be a little bit more intentional about the habits that I choose. How do you incorporate getting things done into your journal? For those of you who don't know, the system is based on the book Getting Things Done by David Allen. I think this is an older edition, so slightly different title. But as the title suggests, it's all about the art of stress-free productivity. Having not actually read the book at this stage, I'm not too sure what in my journal really reflects the Getting Things Done system. I did, however, draw this flowchart out in one of my previous journals, but that was before I knew it was from Getting Things Done. I think the part of my planning that's most closely tied to David Allen's system, though, would be my weekly reset checklist. The categories that I have for this one and the steps I have on it are an interpretation of his weekly review process. On my Notion, which I also use for planning, I also have a master to-do list with everything that I think of that needs to be done, and then the tasks that I actually want to work on for any given week come off this and go into my weekly spread. Would you ever consider using a pocket printer? I totally would. I actually asked for one for Christmas. Well, it was on my master wish list. I didn't specifically ask for it. Vogel was going to get me an HP sprocket, but the man in the store that he was talking to said that he thought that they weren't making their photo paper anymore. I don't know how true that is. I'm pretty skeptical, but I'd be open to using one, though I'd probably only use it for memory keeping type stuff, because I do prefer to draw in my own decorations by hand. This leads us into the next section, which is all about bullet journal supplies. What is the best / your favourite product for XYZ? For this one, I was asked in particular about a few things, one being the best GSM paper. This really depends on how you want to use your bullet journal and personal preference. Personally, with the way that I bullet journal at the moment, I really don't like ghosting, so I do enjoy the 160 GSM of the Archer and Olive. When I was just writing checklists though, and where I didn't really mind the ghosting, the 100 GSM of the LT 1917 was fine. A happy balance between the two is 120 GSM, but some people love 52. I was also asked about the best products for someone just starting. The general recommendation would be get a pen that you actually enjoy writing with, and a notebook with your preferred type of paper, both in terms of thickness and also in terms of paper style. Most people who bullet journal prefer dot grid. I am one of those people. But others enjoy actual grid paper or lined paper, or some people also prefer just blank paper. I want bullet journaling to be a good experience for all of our beginners, and starting with products you actually like is a step in the right direction. My favourite supplies for bullet journaling are of course my Archer and Olive notebook, and the Faber-Castell Pitt artist pens for all of my black writing. In terms of favourite markers, I personally enjoy the Tombow dual brush markers, but they aren't the cheapest, so I did make sure I actually enjoyed bullet journaling before I went and bought these ones. I also got a question about my preferred pencils. but the only ones I really used so far in my journal are regular graphite pencils. Though I did also get some Prismacolors for Christmas, which I am looking forward to using. Are the Acrylograph pens good? I haven't had much of a chance to try them out yet, but so far I have been enjoying them. They're quite straightforward to use. You just shake them up, press the nib into the paper until the paint starts flowing, and go. Like all paint pens, you really do have to shake them a fair bit to get the paint mixed properly. So far I've only opened up my primary set, but I need to have a look at the others. I'm also planning on using acrylographs in the monthly giveaways I'm doing over on my Patreon as well. Have you ever considered using a Hobonichi or Stalogy? I haven't really, at least not for bullet journaling, just because having the 52 GSM paper isn't really for me. I always feel like when I'm handling paper like that, I'm going to end up ripping it. I know they're supposed to be good for fountain pens in theory, which honestly just kind of blows my mind just because of how thin the paper is. Questions on this topic came up a lot, so I felt it deserved its own category. This included things like how to stay consistent in your journal, how to make sure you're keeping up with it and checking in. I will start by saying that I do have a separate video on how to keep up with your bullet journal, which has a bunch of tips on how to stay consistent. So rather than rehashing all those here, I do recommend you go check that one out if you hadn't already. There were also a couple of questions that weren't fully covered by that video though. Have you ever had a bullet journal slump? How did you get out of it? Although aspects of this question were covered in that video, I wanted to focus on it in particular, if not just to say, yes, I have had bullet journal slumps. As you guys likely know, 2020 was a fair bit of a bullet journal slump for me. In terms of getting out of that slump though, the single most important thing I did to help myself was to get reflective, asking myself why was I in a slump? Why isn't my system working for me? And then getting specific with my answers. Considering aspects like the materials I was using, where I was putting information, what parts of the system felt stale or weren't serving me well. What was I doing just because it was typical to be done rather than actually helpful to me as an individual? Identifying the friction points, thinking about what time of day I like to plan versus when I was trying to plan, etc. Answering questions like these can help us identify the problem areas and then start to work on solutions. Your problems and solutions will likely be different to mine, but an example from me would be about materials. I personally don't like working on the blackout paper because I don't like gel pens. Identifying this made it way more clear to me why I was having a bullet journal slump in August and November of 2020. Help! My bullet journal is too nice for me to use. I totally understand where you're coming from with this point. When I first got my Archer and Olive, I was so excited to use it, but I was also in a way afraid that my spreads and to-do lists just weren't doing a journal like this justice. Sometimes I still let those feelings creep back in, but for the most part, what I have to tell myself is, Jess, what the heck? You bought this journal because you wanted to use it. Notebooks are made to be filled, and filling them with messy to-do lists is just as valid as filling them with amazingly artistic work, which is also just as valid as doing something in between. I can't make you change your mindset about this, but I just want to encourage anyone who is feeling this way about their journal, however you're going to fill it is perfectly fine. It's kind of like the people who save their good dinnerware only for special occasions. You bought it to be used. Use it. Our next section is about bullet journal ideas, and our first question is, how do you come up with ideas? Outside of just seeing awesome inspiration online and adapting it to fit my own needs, the main way I come up with ideas is by tackling my journal with a problem solver mindset. So working through a process of, okay, I want a spread for this purpose. What kind of elements or sections do I need as part of that? How do I want to be filling it in? Those kind of thoughts. Once I know roughly what I want from the layout, I can then either start penciling in a mock-up in my journal, or sometimes I'll use my spread planner document that I have in Excel. This one's also available to my patrons. Often before I come up with a final layout though, I will have done a fair bit of penciling in, erasing, tweaking, redrawing, etc. How do you add yearly trackers when your Bujo is already set up? There are two main ways this can be done outside of just sticking extra pages into the front of your journal. The first is just to turn to the next available page and set it up there. That's very much in keeping with the original bullet journal method, but I can also understand how that doesn't really sit well with some people. Having a yearly tracker just dropped in the middle of a bunch of weeklies. Another way, and what is probably my preference, is to put any additional long-term trackers you want at the back of your journal. This way they're still easily accessible and they're kept separate from your monthly spreads. Do you have layout ideas for XYZ? Depending on what you're looking for, I may well have ideas for that. My recommendation would be to check out either my bullet journal ideas and tips playlist or my bullet journal collections playlist, as that's where most of my ideas are found. For instance, I have videos related to spreads for high school and university students, a video on different reading logs and trackers, and one of monthly reviews including the Level 10 Life. Just a reminder that I have links to all of the videos I mention in the description box below, so do make sure you go have a look. While you're down there, and if you hadn't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on my future videos. Having you guys subscribe always means a lot to me. How can I improve my doodles? I hope you're ready for a really unsatisfying answer. It's practice. But more than that, really, if you want to improve quickly, you need to undertake deliberate practice. This is when your practice is purposeful and systematic. Your practice should have a specific goal in mind, and you should give it your focused attention. This way, the practice you do will be more meaningful and impactful. As part of this, what can also be helpful is using online tutorials, whether they be videos, pictures, or written, depending on the skills you're trying to build. This leads into our next question category, which is all about teaching. What is the best tip you got when you started teaching? Don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. As a new teacher, I spent so much time making my own resources when the ones provided to me from the people who taught the courses before me would have sufficed. Heck, I still do that. There is of course merit in making your own things, or making things your own. But when you're first starting out, not every single thing needs to be of your own creation. Your time is precious, so make sure that you're spending your time and energy on the things that are actually aligned with what's going to have the most impact for your students. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. What is your favorite/least favorite thing about teaching? I love interacting with my students and being part of their learning journey. Whether that be in my subject area or just in life in general, interpersonal skills matter. My least favourite thing would be how it takes over what really should be my personal time. Teaching for me isn't the kind of work that I leave at work. Some of the more experienced teachers I know can do this pretty well, but there's a reason that I talk about being tired in my vlogs so often. A lot of my time that would otherwise be me resting and recuperating is spent making slides or marking tests or writing reports, etc. What is your favourite topic/year level to teach? In terms of topic, that would be the atomic structure, bonding and energy changes topic in Year 12 chemistry. Year 12 in New Zealand is the year before the final year of high school. And my favourite year levels to teach are 8s, 11s and 12s. I just find that students in those year levels are at an age/stage of life that is enjoyable to work with. How has your teaching experience changed since the pandemic? I talked about teaching during the pandemic in a previous video, which I've got linked down below, but since the lockdown, not a huge amount has really been that different. I mean, different to pre-lockdown, that is. In New Zealand, we've been at alert level 1 for quite a while, and it doesn't really have any noticeable impact on day-to-day going-ons in school. We are very lucky in that respect. I know that that picture is quite different for other places in the world. How do you use your bullet journal in school? Typically, when I take my bullet journal to school, I'll either keep it in my to and from work bag or on my desk. I don't typically take it into the classrooms I'm teaching in. I'll normally try and check in with it during the day, normally at break times or during non-teaching periods. In terms of spreads and layouts I use, I actually have a video coming up this weekend focused on that topic. Do your students watch your channel? Some of them do, but I'm not too sure which of my videos in particular they like to watch. One of my students even submitted a question for this video though. Have you introduced your students to bullet journaling? Technically yes. Before I started bullet journaling, I introduced my form class to the idea as a way of keeping on top of their homework, extracurriculars, assignments, etc. At the time though, I didn't really know what it was, so I probably didn't sell it as well as I could have. What was your journey to become a science teacher and a content creator? It's a long story, so we'll just do the abridged version. I did a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry and then a Master's in Teaching and Learning. After finishing my degrees, I applied to a bunch of places until I got a job offer at my current school to teach chemistry, physics, and general science. Towards the end of my first year of teaching, I got into bullet journaling, and then about 14 months after that is when I started my YouTube channel with a video of my 2018 bullet journal setup. I've been asked about making a video regarding my YouTube journey in particular, so if that's something you guys would like to see a video on, let me know in the comments. That brings us to the next question category, which I have titled YouTube. What is your best tip for growing on YouTube? Probably the biggest tip would be consistency, which is kind of a laugh coming from me considering that I struggle with it so much. I just know that a lot of people on YouTube say that the algorithm likes it if you're consistent in your posting. Which bullet journalists inspire you? I put this one in the YouTube category because the majority of them have YouTube channels, but some that come to mind would be Cindy Goodrem-Baldo, Erin of Erin Floto Designs, Masha of Masha Plans, Lenny of Lenny Does Things, Lars of PLS Lars, and Rose of Little Miss Rose. What other YouTube channels do you enjoy? I don't really watch a whole heap outside of bullet journaling videos, but the main one would have to be Sam of Sam the Cooking Guy. I find that when I'm filming my own plan with me's, more often than not I'm watching his videos. If you watch my vlogs, you may have also seen the hoodie from him, which I wear very often. How much time does it take you to edit Plan With Me videos? For Plan With Me's, it very much depends on the amount of footage I have. The longer it took me to set up the spreads, typically the longer it takes me for editing. Of course, editing time is increased when you have transitions, overlays, that kind of stuff. In most of my Plan With Me's, I don't have a lot of those. But for simple spreads like my weekly layouts, it'll take me at least double the time, if not triple, to do the editing. So if I have 20 minutes of footage, it'll take me at least 40 to 60 minutes to edit that. This relationship changes for longer setups, because usually in longer setups, like my monthly setups that can take several hours, because so much of that is time-lapsed, it'll take a lot less time to edit them. In those ones, the thing that takes the most amount of time is the voiceovering. I can say though, a way to make my editing a lot smoother is to pre-plan what I want in a video before I hit record. So knowing what kind of shots I want and in what order. Where do I want to do a transition? Where do I want to zoom in, zoom out, that kind of stuff. Knowing these things makes it a lot easier. We're now on to the questions related to New Zealand. What's the best place in New Zealand to visit? Well, Wellington of course, so you can come visit me. I haven't really been to a lot of places in New Zealand. I did really enjoy my trip to the Waikato though. So if you're ever coming to New Zealand, I would recommend going there. Go and see the glowworm caves and Hobbiton. They were both big highlights for me. Can we bullet journal together if I visit you in New Zealand? We certainly can. If you're in Wellington this weekend actually, we're having a Wellington Planners meetup. The details for that one can be found in the Planner Lovers New Zealand group over on Facebook. So if you are in the Wellington region and you do like planners, I hope that I can see you there. Would you ever do a New Zealand themed monthly setup? I'd be open to doing a theme like that. I have technically done a New Zealand native flora and fauna theme before. That was back in March of 2018. For that one I just did some simple decorations on each of the pages of my monthly setup, with things like the tuatara, the kiwi, the kia, stuff like that. I then also did a Kiwi Christmas inspired wreath for the start of my December setup, but the rest of the pages in that one were just regular Christmas theme. The next section I called Jess in General, because it's just questions about me. Where are you originally from? Originally I'm from Melbourne, Australia, but I've been living in Wellington, New Zealand for the past 13 years. Will you start a TikTok? Not anytime soon. I have enough on my plate and I don't really feel like figuring out a new platform, to be completely honest. Do you have a favourite animal? Yep, it is a snail, close second being the honey badger. Where did you get your headband? For those of you who don't watch my vlogs, the headband being referred to in this question is this one. I wear it all the time. Literally every day of the holidays, I have worn this headband. As soon as I get home, I put on the headband. I got this one from the Body Shop. And although it looks like cat ears, it's technically marketed as raccoon ears. I don't know what raccoon ears really look like, but I'm pretty sure they don't look like this. Our next question category is for any miscellaneous questions I received. What is Vogel's job?
I am a patent examiner with the Intellectual Property Office of New Zealand. You guys might call it a patent. Basically what I do is I look at descriptions of inventions and assess them to see if they comply with the Act. And if they do, they get protection from anyone making, selling, or otherwise utilising their invention. And as I say it out loud, it sounds super boring, but I enjoy it, so...
Who is the best Emily you know? Well, team, the battle was fierce, but it had to come down to this Emily, who is honestly like my most supportive friend. She is such a gem, and I am so lucky to have her. Would you consider making a pre-printed bullet journal to sell? Yes, kind of. One of my goals is to make a goal-setting planner, so one that's designed to help you set and achieve goals. I have taken a grand total of no steps towards that goal as of yet, but it is something that I would like to do in the future. I wouldn't be opposed to making a bullet journal version of that as well. Along with the questions I answered today, I also got a fair few questions about Notion, but rather than fitting a description of that process into a video in this style, I want to make a video dedicated to Notion. So if you want to see that one, do make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Question of the day for you guys though, do you have any questions you want answered on our next monthly Q&A? Also, if you see a question that somebody else has posted and you think, oh yeah, I'd like the answer to that one, do make sure to give their comment a thumbs up so I know it's something you guys are interested in. Thank you to all the gorgeous people who took the time to leave questions for this video though. Hopefully you found my answers satisfying or at least interesting. If you liked today's video team, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more videos on planning, productivity and personal development. Until next time, bye!